You might know this guy here, Dan Wootton, who wrote bad things about Johnny in The Sun. False allegations as a matter of fact, but now Dan's got allegations out against him. They don't seem so false, by the way, but not only that, Dan got axed from the Daily Mail, and also it seems his GB News suspension might be permanent. We don't know exactly for sure, but that's how it feels. This is from Pink News from November 14th. It's called Dan Wootton replaced by GB News until further notice. So they have these phrases suspended until further notice. They haven't actually said terminated or fired yet. But anyway, it doesn't look like Dan will be back. Now, this is one of those awkward cases where I think I disagree with Pink News on like 90% of what they write. I gotta assume they supported Amber in the past and things like that, but we're meeting here in the middle because we both don't like Dan. I'd assume, since I think they did support Amber, at one point they did like Dan, but now they don't because of the thing Dan laughed along with Lawrence Fox, so they must have mixed feelings. It's confusing. But let's see what they got, because this is the article I found. Dan Wootton has been replaced as a presenter on GB News until further notice following his suspension earlier in the year. The TV show host was suspended by the right-wing channel in September after a sexist rant by Lawrence Fox, who was also suspended and later fired, aimed at a journalist, Ava Evans, was broadcast live on air while Wootton smiled and laughed. Now, I gotta say, I guess you could say it was sexist, but it wasn't something that a man could say about a woman that a woman couldn't say about a man. I guess it was just, I don't know, kind of distasteful. I've got some mixed feelings on it, but all in all, I've got no dog in the fight. You know, it is what it is. They actually repeat what he said. During the segment referring to Evans, Fox asked who would want to shag that, adding, in his view, no self-respecting man would climb into bed with her. And like I said, a woman can say that about a man who would want to shag that guy. And if she did, probably no backlash, by the way. So that's why I'm, questioning, is that sexist or just something distasteful he said about another person? I think to be sexist, it's got to be something specifically about a woman that can't be about a man. That would make sense to me. But nonetheless, not relevant to the news. Fine. Then they say Dan Wootton Tonight was pulled from the schedule and an internal investigation launched. At the same time, Wootton was also being investigated by Mail Online and was subsequently fired. Looks like it's all going bad for you-know-who these days. You-know-who being Danny Boy. And they've got the tweet there that shows today, GB News announced a number of shows. Patrick Christie tonight, Good Afternoon Britain, and the starting times. And I guess the point is, Dan ain't on the list. They confirm that, in fact, that is Dan's time slot, so there you have it. Here's the announcement for the new show. Thank you to all the wonderful viewers and listeners that have made my time at GB News so magical. I'll be doing the 9 to 11 show, Patrick Christie's Tonight, until further notice. I can promise you that I will give it my all. And a statement released said that Patrick is the ultimate people's champion for the People's Channel, whatever that means. Supposedly, he's authentic, entertaining, relatable, sharp. Okay, fine. And of course, they mentioned some things about Dan that it's been a controversial few months for him. Of course, they mentioned the Byline Times, who's investigating Dan and has been for 3 years, which they also mention. They mentioned the allegations against Dan, especially about using the fake identity, and that Dan denies it, and that Dan says it was a smear campaign, and Dan was the target, or is the target. They then say the News UK, who publishes The Sun, and DMG Media, who owns the Mail Online, also are investigating Dan. I must add, the Metropolitan Police in the UK will also be investigating Dan. So, I'm waiting for those results. Wait, they also say Ofcom will also be investigating Dan. So, Dan's got a lot of investigations in his future. Good luck with that, Dan. That face says it all, I gotta admit. I picked a good pick. That's about it. Once again, I'm pretty sure the pink news here is not exactly on my side with many things, but I guess we meet in the middle here about Dan. Let me know what you think in the comments. Doing pop culture, entertainment, things like that. If you're not subscribed here, consider it. If you don't, I'll be sad, but I'll get over it. See you next time.